Okay, so I imagine that this is the start of the 6 days of summer. 6 days of summer, 6 days of snow. Let me just put this down here. I scramble my feet. All of a sudden, I feel anxious, though I wasn't sure why. Worry, worry weighed down my consciousness, but it was a nebulous and vague kind of worry I couldn't explain because I couldn't discern the source of my anxiety. I wasn't sure how long to go. I wasn't sure how to go about uh, stating it, and that would be troubled me. That troubled me all the more. It was better to move. I couldn't stay in my room any longer. If I did, I would have gone mad. I might have gone mad. Oh my god. You trash! Oh, what? Who said that? Which one you said that? I kept along the wooden corridor. I was as quietly as I could. It was still relatively early in the morning. I didn't want to disturb any of the other guests. Any of the guests. Not that I had seen any other guests. Exactly. That's what I was saying in the part before this. I presumed that there had been other guests, though, or Reiko would not have looked up, looked so put upon that morning. While I had been lying on my futon luxuriously in the little heat it afforded me, had been Roka already been up and about, sweeping floors and conveying messages to the cook and jumping at the sound of her mother's authoritarian tones. Not that, not for the first time, I felt sorry for the girl. It was unfortunate my pity had very few practical applications. It kept me quiet, my head bent, and I continued to pick my way down the hallway, no matter how sudden and I attempted to thread. The floor creaked all the same, announcing my presence to whoever cared to listen. But it was nobody around to listen. But there was nobody around to listen. If there were other guests, they were tucked away in their rooms, still fast asleep. It was so quiet, save for the sounds of myself and my own shuffling. I could almost bring myself to believe that I was the only person left alive, the only one in the world. There was no other guests at the Azumi Inn. Why would there be? If there were guests, they wouldn't be flesh and blood humans. They would have been crazy to come to a secluded place like this on your own accord. No, there was no humans here, only ghosts. Maybe when I was sleeping, the ghosts crept out of the snows and held parties. What? They would tell stories of good old days and play the koto and let the sake flow. That's that's else. What else was there to do in these mountains, even for ghosts? They were more sinister and helpless romantics. They wouldn't find their second halves here. They were so downtrodden servants and lonely proprietors of decades past. They wouldn't find comfort here. If they were lords of samurai seeking revenge against the defeated kinsmen, kinsmen, they wouldn't find salvation here. It was far too desolate. Oh, hello. Hello, Miss Kyoto. I mean, Kyoto, but I don't even remember her name. While conjuring up these stories inside my head, I failed to realize I managed to stumble across a prominent figure in the inn's current state. That is, until the figure in question cleared her throat and gave me a curious look. What the fuck are you doing here, Obi-Wan? Mr. Tanabe? Mr. Tanabe? Excuse me, Mr. Tanabe? Oh. I stared blankly away from the hazy ghosts of yesterday that had settled behind my eyelids like snow. The helpless romantics dissolved in the fits of tears, and the throttled servants bowed themselves into non-existence in shame. The samurai sulked away into the shadows. There was nobody left in the Azumi Inn. Nobody save for myself and my hostess, Miss Kakuchi. Kakuichi Kayo. Miss Kakuichi Kayo. I apologize, I said, hastily bowing my head. I didn't mean to ignore you. I was just lost in my own world, I suppose. It is quite alright. It's quite alright, I said Miss Koichi, though I had my doubts. I didn't take Miss Koichi for the kind woman who appreciated being ignored. I didn't think anybody enjoyed being ignored. How else can we confirm our existence if not with the others? The eyes of others. Miss Koichi seemed to have less patience with it than most. I just wanted to ask, Miss Koichi continued with her voice smooth and soft. Oh, well, that's not my voice. Well, let me do the best smooth and fast. Whether you are pleasant or not. whether you had a pleasant night. It was fine, thank you, I responded in turn, just as she had expected, polite yet distanced. We had been two birds passing in an opposite migratory path, one going north and one going south, never to see each other again. That's what most human relationships boil down to. Ah, all the snow must have made me solidificate. Maybe it was just the cold. I hope the wind did not keep you awake, Miss Koichi asked. It took a bit of getting used to, I said carefully, but I was able to settle down in the end. There was different noises everywhere you go. Tokyo can be loud at night too. I feel like I make a different voice for him every time. I can imagine, said Miss Koichi with the air of one who could not care to imagine at all. Do you have any plans? I thought I might go for a walk. There was little else to do, and the forest looks pretty, very pretty. Like you, Miss Koichi. Kimono needs to... Okay. It is pretty, Miss Koichi agreed. But you have to be careful. I wouldn't want you to wander off and get lost. I'm not a fucking baby, alright? It would be bad for business. Kicking your ass out right now would be bad. Lucy, I guess, would not set us in a great esteem, no. She didn't even smile at my joke. I was sure Ryoko would have. Just lay off, dude. She's not a laugher. Go for a walk by all means, but don't venture too far into the forest. There should be some signs that point to Hagaskawawa. That's the nearest village. If you keep sight of those signs, you should be fine. As long as you find Kashikawawa. Alright, thank you. It's no problem, said Miss Koichi. And of course it wasn't. She was just doing her job. She wasn't telling me to be careful because she liked me. She hardly knew me. I didn't think my first impression had been all that favorable. Just that I didn't particularly like Miss Koichi. I got feelings that she didn't particularly like me either. Dude, why is this guy so quick to judge? Jesus. She's not that mean. She hasn't said anything mean. Maybe she's like snarky or something. I don't know. He didn't persuade that to me in the text. So, I don't know. Just try to come back before 12 if you don't have to. You don't have to, of course, but if you want to eat lunch in the inn, that would be advisable. There aren't many restaurants around here unless you're prepared to walk in the snow for miles or hire a taxi. Can I take your ass? I bowed my head, thanked her again, and then I left. I had no desire to look back. Dang, dude, this guy's rude. Oh, that is pretty. Ha. The crisp air chilled from the snow that had fallen last night danced across the tip of my tongue. It was soothing and set me at ease, perhaps perversely, given it so frigid. It was so frigid. If it had been cold inside, inside the inn, that was nothing compared to the temperature outside of its old wooden walls. The air felt cold enough to preserve a corpse living in the impeccable, pristine condition like a doll freshly wrapped in a box filled with tissue paper. Miss Koichi, however, was even colder. God, why do you... Rude! You one rude ass dude. I was content to presume that Koichi's blood was warm and red like mine, but there was something about her that unsettled me. What, is she dead? Uh-huh. Wait, is she a ghost, dude? Ryoko, meanwhile, had to live with that woman. With the woman. The poor girl had my condolences. I don't like the way this is headed so far. As I walked, following the wooden signs Koichi had pointed out to me, the snow had crunched beneath the soles of my shoes. When I glanced behind me at the winding path I had taken through the forest, I could see a long line of footprints that were only blemishes on the otherwise flawless canvas. I had felt a little sad that my presence had disturbed the environment, so I wasn't worth it. The snow, though inferior, seemed that to have far more value than I did. It was pretty at any rate, and probably brought people more joy. Most of my poems, my novels included, were rather gloomy works. The critics had panned my novel particularly, claiming it was rather too maudlin and not realistically so. Perhaps that was because I was writing from a position of privilege. How could I write about sadness, true, deep, untapped sadness, when I had lived a comfortable life, accompanied by a loving wife and 2 devoted sons? I had never had experienced a great loss or grief or sorrow, just boredom. Had I had the nerve to tire Sachiko's presence simply because I had grown accustomed to the taste of her miso soup, I looked at it like that I was a horrible human being. I know, I'm starting to not like this guy. Did I, well, I guess me in this instance, I don't like myself. Did I deserve to have a wife like that? Oh my god, Revelation is met. And Dad doesn't like himself. I will never harm, never wronged me, and yet, at the same time, I had found I could no longer stand to be in the same room as her. Oh my god, Sachiko Salvatore, which was held was so charming, was now nothing more than an errant. It was almost though my vile thoughts were staining the snow rather than my feet. I felt as I walked, and my existence was making the world a worse place. Perhaps it would have been better if I had simply slipped away like the melting snow. However, I was too old for flights of fancy, and I knew I wouldn't be so irresponsible. Sachiko was right waiting for me, and so were Kenta and Kanji. Kanji, Kenja, whatever. I had formed too many conscious connections during my life. I couldn't afford to sever them over a few childish impulses. Starting a new life, how could I? Out here? You should just walk into that woods as far as you can go, lay down, and just die. Just as I had grown sick and tired of Sachiko and her suit, which was so predictably delicious, it was almost irritating. I laughed wearily to myself. How lucky was I that this was all to be upset about. It was almost like my life was too perfect. I wondered what Ryoko would have made. Wondered what Ryoko would make of my book. Perhaps she would like it. Women seem to favor my writing more than men. Perhaps I had a fondness for penning romantic stories. Mawkish romantic stories where nothing more where nothing went right and everything fell apart. My novel was about a young girl who apprenticed to be a geisha. Of course, I myself had never been apprentice as a geisha. I am not a woman. Maybe that was my book. Didn't sound sincere. I had no idea what I was doing really. I was just fantasizing. I wasn't fantasizing, but Sakura liked it. Then again, Sakura liked everything I did. I did not know if I could trust her opinion. I paused. Another wooden sign. Apparently, Hachiko was 10 miles away. The wooden sign was a useful landmark amidst the sea of the mere maze of repetition. On out of here, strangely, the silent forest and the trees seemed endless, and they formed a truly dizzying collection of brown trunks with icy spots. No trees here bear fruit. They were frozen. Bear fruit, frozen. A robin twittered overhead, and the delicate figure of a bird hopped amongst the branches. Its head tilted to one side. Its colorful feathers seemed to glow against the snow, a splash of orange against the white. Are we heading back? Oh yeah, we're heading back. Okay. My walk brought me much needed color to my face. My cheeks were flustered with blood and fingers were tingling pleasantly from the cold. I returned to my room at midday with the intention of secluding myself beneath the warmth of my karatsu, but oh my god. My plans had not accounted for the uninvited but not unwanted guest. Rako was kneeling in the corner of my room, my breakfast tray at her feet. I gathered that she had been in the process of clearing away my morning meal. A little late, wasn't it? But something had distracted her. It was a book. To be more precise, it was a book of poetry, a neat little anthology bound in leather. This had been too startling were it were not for one crucial point. They were not just any poems, they were my poems. Damn right, she's like, dang, this literature though. I wasn't the sort of person to travel with a book of my own poetry, you understand. That would have been rather arrogant of me. I've never been overly proud of my work either. Some of the poems in my collection were a good 20 years old or more, and I felt my style had matured a lot since then. There were so many useless, unnecessary words in those earlier efforts, and if they were emotionally affecting, they were overly sentimental. In my opinion, poetry shouldn't try to bludgeon the reader over the head with the wieldy mass of words. Poems should use their words carefully, like tools. Each and every syllable should be selected to achieve an overall effect. You can liken it to a doctor performing a delicate operation. He shouldn't use unnecessary instruments or apply too much pressure. That isn't the sign of a good doctor. Novice writers, I think, mistake their large vocabulary for unequivocal genius and the struggle to utilize as many grandiloquent terms and phrases as possible to prove their own superiority, not to benefit their readers' experience, but for the sake of their own bloated egotism. It's quite a tiresome experience. In any event, I couldn't pack the anthology of poetry myself. Sachiko had. I wasn't sure why she thought I wanted it. Maybe she thought it would help me with my writing if I could reflect upon my past failures. Okay, not that Sachiko would have called any of my works failures, even some of the more trite pieces. Returning to my room, cold and tired, to discover article pouring through my poems, however. That was an unexpected development, and my mouth parted in a small circle of unabashed surprise. Some of my poems were rather personal. I wasn't accomplished enough in my youth to be cryptic. I was too in love with myself to cut down the details. There were poems that were about my childhood and my parents, and the kite I had when I was young. When I was a young boy, there was poems about meeting Sachiko and viewing the cherry blossoms together in Uno Park, and the birth of our first son, Kenta. It was, in other words, an overview of my entire life. This little girl whom I had barely spoken to now held my history in her hands. This guy just got done saying like how his life is like irrelevant. Now he's like, oh fuck, my life is in her hands. Whether she realized it or not, this had given her immense amount of power. I think she must have understood the gravity of her crime in some part because she looked abashed and dropped the book as though it burnt. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, she stuttered. I know I shouldn't have, but I was clearing away your breakfast things, and then I saw it in your case, and I know it was wrong for me, but I was just so curious. It's alright. I don't mind, really. I understand completely if you want to file a complaint. What, to your mother? There's no chain of command here. I'll accept any kind of punishment. I. And then she broke off, blinking in surprise. Did you say you don't mind? Well, I coughed and I ran my hand through my hair. I suppose that is somewhat embarrassing. Oh, you're not. I keep on skipping. Oh, you're not? Ryoka said, inclining her head to one side. Why are you carrying around a volume of poems you don't care for then? It was a good question. My wife packed it. Oh, Ryoka said again with the syllable slipping from her lips, as clear as the stream water. Does your wife like poetry? Sachiko isn't too familiar with poetry. I think she likes the collection because she feels she has to. I'm not sure much about how much she understands. I wince, but that sounds rather presumptuous. We're pretentious. Yeah, pretentious. I don't. When I read that, like I try to read the words, and sometimes like I skip around, and then I think back, and I don't know. well, Ryoka looked down at the tiny flowers, suddenly shy. I know I'm rather young, and my opinion doesn't count for much, but I liked those poems. You did? Yes, well, I didn't finish all of them, but they were pretty, so detailed too. The detail is the worst thing. They can be over embellished. Well, maybe it was a bit too much at points, but I think that shows the passionate the writer is. Yes, Ryoka said, nodding as she came to a conclusion. That's it. They were very passionate. The writer really painted a picture in their words. I could see everything so clearly. I was transfixed. Even the poem about fireworks. Especially the poem about fireworks. Ryoka's own arises seems to light up with bursts of pyrotechnical wonder. Goodness, I sighed. Oh, goodness, I sighed, letting my head meet my hands. That poem is the worst of the bunch. Well, maybe you can't understand it because you're a man. It's a very romantic poem. Ah, yes, the poem about fireworks. It was one of the first poems I had written. It had been popular when I published it in the local newspaper, and perhaps one of my better known works. For that reason, I hated it. Looking back on it, it would seem far too juvenile and immature. The imaginary laboratory piled on with a shovel and the theme of silence. It was integrated clumsiness. A poem about silence should have known better. A poem about silence should have known better than to fill every single space for breath with unwieldy words, and as for the lovers leaning in to share their kiss, well, it was Sajiko's favorite poem of mine too. She she always said reading it made her happy. It helped her remember. I tried to tell Sachiko that my words were too labored and imperfect and the accurate depiction of real events, but she didn't seem to care. Apparently, this overflowing of emotion added to the piece. It's passionate poem, said Raku dreamily. Fire was still sparkling in her irises. Oh, irises. But it's rather dignified at the same time. It's a passion that threatens to spill over as couples' lips draw closer together. She sighed, breathless, and held one hand against her chest. I wish I could kiss somebody like that. Okay, but mother would never allow it. I'll die without ever being kissed, and then maybe the people in Hyrule will tell ghost stories about me. Oh God, I do not know about this. It may seem that they're quite maudlin, and for such a young girl, maybe that was why Roku looked so troubled. I've never seen fireworks before, but that poem was so vivid. It helped me imagine. Roku shifted her face, a little flush from her sudden confession. Perhaps she was embarrassed. I felt a touch embarrassed on her behalf, but she didn't duck her head or try to hide her hands. I came to clear your breakfast half an hour ago, but I got so taken in by these poems I forgot what I was supposed to be doing. It was the fireworks poems, especially. Of course it was. It was always a firework poem. Perhaps it wasn't such a bad piece of work then, if Ryoko rated it so highly, but a stubborn part of me didn't want to accept that. It had written so. It had written it. I had written it so many years ago. Surely I had created finer work since then. I know that's the problem with like artists, and like once they make a good piece, then it's kind of hard to follow up like with the kind of like with rappers. Come out with one good song, then like a few years later, where's Fetty Wap? Where's Fetty Wap? That's what I want. I was so pleased Ryoko enjoyed my poem, but at the same time, it was a bit unsatisfying. It wasn't nice to think that you haven't progressed at all in your craft, and in fact, may have gone backwards over the 2 decades, 20 years. It's a long time, too long rather, to cling to a youthful re-embraces of first kiss stolen beneath the starry-filled sky. I didn't know what to do with myself after I read the poem, Reiko confessed. Oh, I just sat there thinking. I wet my lips with my tongue. All of a sudden, my throat felt rather dry. If you don't mind me asking, what did it make you think about exactly? Oh, well, what did it make you think about? I see. Oh, all kinds of things, said Reiko. I thought about festivals I had never gone to and pretty clothes I'll never wear, and boys I'll never kiss. She smiled sheepishly. What am I saying? I sound so selfish and uncultured, reading such a pretty poem and only thinking about myself. I bet there are deeper themes in there. I'm too stupid to see them. The author would probably be mad at me. Oh no, I said. The author wouldn't be mad at you at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. How can you be so certain? Do you know them? Quite intimately, in fact. You see, I paused for dramatic effect, assumed the theory of the whole thing, theoretically, In the moment, I would have been a disciple of Kanabuki theater. Ryoko stared at me expectantly, her hands clenched into fists. For a few moments, it seemed as though neither of us could breathe, but wasn't that foolish? I already knew that the grand reveal, though. Ryoko didn't. Not yet. Tadabi Ichi, I said, gesturing in front of her. Oh my. I said, gesturing to the front of the anthology. I'm not sure if I gave you my full name yesterday. Well, I opened my arms and modestly expressed my face. That's me. Oh. Ryoko looked at the cover of the book, then the back at me. She stared. Then her lips fell open in the neat little ring, so perfectly formed I half wanted to run a thread of cotton through it, and her cheeks flustered. It was remarkable, really, how red she could have become when she was so cold inside. It was less cold, however, in another body to keep me company. Ryoko's mere presence seemed to have everything cozier. Then, does that mean the one who wrote these poems was... No shit. No, that's right, I wrote the poem. Oh, but I hesitated and to append because Ryoko seemed to be on the verge of a breakdown. Some of these are rather old. I might as well be a different man now. Certainly, nothing I'd written since the event of Fireworks had achieved such levels of popularity. Unfortunately, the attempts to placate Ryoko did not have the intended effect. Her eyes widened, pupils swimming in the whites, and she opened and closed her mouth with juddering emotions like keys struck on a typewriter. I can't believe it, she explained. Then she bowed so deeply and almost knocked her forehead against the floor. And here I was, thinking about the author's intentions and acting so high and mighty when you were the one who wrote it to begin with. I must have sounded so stupid. I mean, it's all good, you know. It's all good in the hood. If only I had been it for the poem other than Fireworks. But I said, you can't understand. I can't believe I said that. Of course you understand. It's your poem. You know far more than I do. It isn't necessarily true. Hearing a perspective is always refreshing. There's a chance I could be conveying themes even I didn't notice. And a piece of writing means something different to every person that reads it. We all have different experiences, and it helps us engage with text in different ways. But what if I read it wrong? There isn't a right or wrong way to read a poem. And I'm not a teacher, and I'm not grading you on this. Please try to calm down. I pause, and if you don't, try bowing, and you don't need to bow either. I was hardly certain of such a situation. I was only a writer, and I'm not particularly a talented one either. That was what the critics said. When I saw Ryuko's face, however, so shy and flustered that the tips of her ears were turning pink, the words of critics who said the Fireworks who oversaw and overrated didn't seem to matter at all that much. Oh, Ryuko ceased in an insistent motion of reverence, which had been making her dizzy, and blinked at me. I'm sorry, she whimpered. I feel like such a fool, like I should stop talking, probably forever. Everyone would be so much happy that way. I wouldn't. What do you mean? I mean, I swallowed. What did I mean? Like, I like hearing about your opinions. It's interesting. Oh, I see. Baruka didn't see. Not then, at least. I must admit, at the moment, neither did I. I knew that I liked her, but I didn't know quite how much I liked her and how much I would come to like her. Oh my god! Brr. Brr. Okay. that's gonna have to do that part. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to finish this because this is pretty. I don't know. I feel like this would be a bit odd. Even like I'm pretty open minded, but geez. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, that's gonna have to stop it. I'm probably gonna take a few days before I make another part. As you can see, these are all made on the same day, like one after another. That's probably why my voice is so dry now.